in the process, the flywheel fell. This is so terrible. I'm finally back to working on the Massey Ferguson MF30. I bought this thing earlier this spring and I just have been so busy with other projects. I haven't gotten around to it, but I finally have some time now to get cracking on this thing. And just so you guys know, I am in the middle of like 4 different videos, so there's gonna be a lot of other cool stuff coming out soon. But in the meantime, I wanna get this ready to be split in half so I can replace this clutch. I got it in the shop here. Luckily I have a lift that I can use to assist me. As you guys saw, I removed the hood, the loader, the fenders, all the heavy items. And one of the things I'm gonna address here is this wiring. This is so terrible. The wiring is getting gutted. The alternator's got it. Look at that. Alternator's gotta go, gotta be replaced, single wire alternator, all new wiring. But that's kind of besides the point. Right now, our goal here is to get the tractor split, get a new clutch in it. I think the clutch is maybe froze up like this guy is. Since we got it here, we got everything apart, we're gonna go ahead and replace it anyway. Unfortunately, since I last cleaned this so long ago, it's gotten a little bit greasy again from some of that residual fuel leaking down from this awesome repair here. Pretty much everything in this column is loose, so that's gonna all have to get tightened up. Pretty much everything on this tractor is loose, and we gotta make it right. So without any more of me talking, let's get started on this thing. Let's get some nuts and bolts removed. See if we can't get this tractor turned into 2. I'm gonna try and just jam this in and open it up, and hopefully this will go into my container. Probably not. We'll probably end up making a big mess. So I got this opened up. Now we're making a little bit of a mess on the floor, of course. Gotta just let it drain now. Get back to you when this thing is drained out. Let's get this probe out of here. A little bit of gunk on there. Nothing abnormal. There's that junk old wiring harness. Got it all ripped out. Much cleaner now. Now I gotta come up with some way to maybe utilize this lift and some jacks to hold the front half and the rear of the tractor up in the air while I get these unbolted. And then in theory, I can just nice and gently roll the tractor away. Without getting overcomplicated here, I just took these lift arms, put them underneath the transmission on a flat spot, and then I put the jack under the oil pan. Oil pan is actually part of the structural integrity of this tractor. This thing's super heavy duty, minus the crack maybe. If anything, we're just gonna make this crack a big crack. But, you know, what do we got to lose here, I guess, right? Thing falls. So I'm gonna get these bolts unbolted and see if I can't just roll this out this way. Well, I think I got everything apart here, so let's see if we can split this tractor. I'm gonna lift this up just a little. Yep. You can see it split there using the, there we go. It's split. Now, will this cooperate? Hopefully I don't have too much weight behind the jack here. I just want to get it to where I got enough room to work comfortably here. Alright, plenty of room here. So I started cleaning out the housing, the transmission housing here, and I got a lot of crap out. But interestingly enough, this pin was sitting right in the bottom there. And why would there be a pin sitting in the bottom? Well, let's go over here. That's tight. That's tight. Oh, what's this? Yep. That's where our pin goes. It appears as if this pin simply fell out for whatever reason, and when the throwout bearing came out, it was only pushing 2, not all 3, thus no clutch action. However, since I'm already this far into this job, I think it'd be silly to just put the pin back in and put it back together, because I'm not sure when the last time this has ever been replaced, if it has ever been replaced. And hopefully this was actually just our culprit here, and luckily everything else looks good. It doesn't look like it damaged much else, so I'll be okay with that. If that's all this was, I am glad we're not just putting the pin back in this and calling it a day. I'm gonna feel a lot better about putting a new clutch in, that's for sure. My local machine shop was able to resurface this flywheel. I'm 90 bucks into it. Hopefully it'll work. Hopefully they didn't take off too much material. They told me it was past the serviceable limit. I said, well, just do it anyway, because I don't have another one of these. So we're going to give it our best shot. It looks real nice. We're going to try and get it on this tractor. All right, the flywheel bolted up. As you can see, these retaining clips that you're supposed to bend over the ends are, those things have seen better days. One of them's even broken there. I ended up just putting Loctite on all of those bolts. I could have probably replaced these, but I didn't. I just had a series of unfortunate events here, and we're kind of back to square one here. So I got the clutch, I got the flywheel and the clutch installed back on the tractor. I was tightening everything down, and then one of the nuts that hold the clutch here onto the flywheel ended up snapping off. And I want to say I should have probably used new bolts, because the ones on here are probably, 40 years old, 50 years old, whatever it may be. They're old. They were pretty rusty to begin with. Since the flywheel was machined past the service limit, I actually believe that the bolts were bottoming out prematurely on the flywheel. So anyway, put an extractor in there, as luck would have it. Brand new extractor set. It broke right away. It's pretty much the way it goes. This is where we're at now. I ended up taking the flywheel off so I could bring it over to the welding bench and weld a nut on it to try and pull that bolt off. In the process, the flywheel fell. It hit my knee, it hit the ground. That's kind of the series of unfortunate events for my knee and the flywheel. But I don't really want to buy a new one either. This is an $800 tractor, so we're trying to do this for cheap. Nonetheless, I brought it over to the bench here. I got it welded up. This was the subject here. Nut welded on. That is what was stuck in there. There's an extractor somewhere in there too. And that thing is stuck right here. As you can see, we got it out. Unfortunately, as you can see, these teeth, if you will, broke in the fall when the flywheel hit the ground. Not ideal. It'll never be balanced again. We're just gonna put it back in. As Junkyard Diggs would say, might not be fixed, but it's gonna be different. This is different. So let's get it put back on. And let's pretend like we didn't see anything. All right, so I can almost confidently say that I'm confident in this. I got the clutch back installed. It's nice and aligned. Flywheel's in. This time I used new grade 8 bolts for both the flywheel, as you saw, and the clutch. I guess now we gotta see if we can jam these two back together. I got the new throwout bearing installed. Shaft is greased up. Let's push them together. I have successfully turned my 2-piece tractor back into a 1-piece tractor. So with some help, I got this thing pushed back together. So I just got the starter back in, got all these bolts in, all torqued down. I am missing one bolt here. I need to get a new one I'm trying to replace nuts and bolts as I go. So I just got to go through this thing and tidy everything up. I'm going to replace this valve cover gasket along with some other gaskets here. So I'll show you guys that. But for now, I'm just going to focus on making sure I got every bolt tightened down. I just finished the boring, daunting task of straightening out all these fuel lines. This throttle linkage was rubbing on this fuel line before. It was just bent in a funny way. So I just tried to straighten them out as best as I could. I rebent these. I pretty much rebent everything and back over to the other side. Just tried to clean everything up a little bit and make it organized and look like it should be there. I'm sure these have been replaced at some point, but I don't think anything is leaking, so we'll keep them on there. I also just went through and tightened up this linkage for the accelerator, for the foot accelerator here, the foot throttle. And then this also ties into the hand throttle here. So I got that all tightened up. It seems to be a lot smoother than previously. And then I also put a new nut bolt and I drilled this out because this was a little wallered out here. Everything is going back together pretty well here. I am going to change the filters out, obviously. I think next I'm going to replace this valve cover gasket. I'm not sure if this was leaking, but this is a great opportunity to replace that. Gonna be using my handy dandy manual here while I got this valve cover off, and make sure that the valve lash is set correctly on this thing. You can see I dropped the new gasket down in there. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing spun around here. I just popped the starter off real quick so I can just bar it over from here, as there's not really a good access point to bar anything over. In fact, I think off the shaft there it drives the hydraulic pump. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it looks like it. Anyway, I'm just gonna bar it over right here. And then I'm gonna run through and each cylinder, make sure the valve lash is set correctly. So I'll go ahead and get started on that. Since I'm already here and I already got all the gaskets, I'm going to pop the air intake off here and I'm going to replace the gasket that goes behind there to ensure that it's nice and sealed up. And then likewise with the exhaust, I do have new manifold gaskets, so those will also be getting replaced. Alright, I got the intake manifold all cleaned up, got all the carbon out of there. As much as I could anyway, it's definitely far better than what it was. So now I got my new gasket. I cleaned my intake air manifold. I'm going to throw my new gasket on there, and then for greatest chance of success here, we're going to throw a little liquid gasket on there just to make sure our air inlet is nice and sealed up. We don't want any dirt getting in there. So now everything's back together. I got the fuel tank plate bolted back on. I just made some little isolators using some rubber that I had around here. Didn't have anything before. It had actually... well, I had a tractor inner tube in there, right? Just when I thought the tank was drained. Guess I'd be mistaken. Tank's back on. I got the manifold. I put a little coat of paint on it, some high temp paint, and I got that back on with new gaskets, and I put new lock washers in back there. Now with this fuel tank, originally it would have had a sediment bowl here, and it would have been hard line all the way down to the primer, but someone cut that a long time ago and hacked in a bunch of other stuff, so I'm just going to make a new setup here with a 3/8 ball valve down to a barb. And then I got a close nipple in here, but I'm gonna need a 90 or a street 90 or something, because just straight here that hits the manifold, that's not gonna work. So I'm gonna have to run and grab a 90. I'm then gonna convert to hose because I have it. And then I have this compression connection here to a 1/4 inch. And then 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch barb. And then I'll just be using some regular hose, and then I got this little inline filter which could act as my new sediment bowl. I just had this laying around, so I might throw it in there, I might not. I have yet to change the oil on this. Well, we'll let this drain out and get the filter changed out. Change out all these filters. So here's the completed fuel system. Took some 3/8 brass nipples and an elbow here, ran it to the shutoff valve. And then it's going into this inline fuel filter. That comes over to the other side here, and just goes back into the hard line. Hopefully nothing here leaks. I gotta tie this up yet. But this is called making do with what you got, and I had a lot of these parts laying around. I did have to buy a couple fittings, but that's all right. Goes from the fuel pump there into the first filter, and then from there goes back over to the other side where it goes to the secondary fuel filter and then into the injection pump. So the fuel setup's done. I changed both filters as you saw. I added this valve here to the coolant jacket, the water jacket there, so we can easily drain the coolant at any time, and then I just put a plug in there for redundancy. Up here, I also put a 1/2-inch iron plug next to the temperature probe or temp sensor. There used to be some type of coolant heater, jacket water heater set up here. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with it, but anyway, this is where we're at. Once again, this little Harbor Freight drill pump is coming in handy. I just use that on my 5-gallon barrel here, and I pump some oil right into the engine, and we're right on the money here. Please disregard the red can here. This is diesel, I promise. You can see it's got the cherry flavor. Well, this is a good sign. Turn this guy on. I got fuel going into this little pre-filter, inline fuel filter. I'm using it as kind of a pre-filter / visual aid. Just got to pump this a couple gazillion times, and you'll see the fuel will start to fill up this bowl. Like I said, I'm gonna be here a while pumping this, but that's all right. Made up this quick cable here to connect the starter. I'm going to use the screwdriver to just bump the starter, and we'll see if it fires up or runs away or something. Oh man, I think we got it. You know what, at this point we got nothing to lose. Let's try a little starting fluid. Alright, let's try that again. I didn't even realize that I had so many things going on. I had my throttle held down, so obviously it's going to rev up right away. So let's try this again. The throttle's set to idle. Clutch works. All right, I feel pretty good about that. So I'm just tying up loose ends here. I got the hydraulic lines back on. Up front here, I replaced, there's a hose in between this line, and that was old and in poor shape. So I replaced that. And then as you can see, I put witness marks and dated each of the filters. So really now it's just a matter of getting the hood back on, starting to tie everything up. I do have to finish the wiring harness, but I want to get some new switches first. And then I'll just build a custom little harness here. We'll do a new alternator, get rid of that old one. This is kind of the fun part. We can start reassembling things. You can see I got the muffler cut off, my unconventional cutting method. I just happen to have the bandsaw or the metal bandsaw out, so I just made a few slits and then popped that old muffler off. But I gotta get a new exhaust gasket. We'll just keep at it, keep getting this thing assembled, get it out of the shop, get the loader back on it, and hopefully we can push some snow with it this winter and some dirt in the spring. Stay tuned. So this is the muffler setup I kind of came up with here. And this is just a 2-inch ID to a 2-inch ID coupler. I got this Stanley muffler at the local farm supply store. So really I just want to put a weld here to make this, I don't want to like use 2 clamps. I think eventually I might swap that out with a chrome exhaust tip with a 90 on it. But for now, let's just get this welded up and get some paint on it, and then that'll complete the exhaust. I got the muffler back on here. I'm gonna pull it over to the other side. I'm gonna try and use the lift to get the loader arms back on this thing. I wanna get this back to a loader. I still have to put the new alternator on, but I haven't received it yet. Other than that, it's pretty much all wired up and ready to go. So I'm gonna try and get that loader going and turn this thing back into a loader tractor and, you know, really put it back together. There's still a lot of odds and ends missing, but that'll come with time. Right now we just need a tractor that works, and I need to be able to use that bucket. So let's get it over there.